How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to follow up on my rifle cleaning video, which I'll leave a link to right here. But I'm going to show you how to take your bolt apart to access your firing pin. So let's say you broke a firing pin, or maybe you just want to take it apart once a year to really truly clean everything out. This is that video to show you how to access your firing pin. Now you really shouldn't need many tools for this job, but what you might want are some really small screwdrivers with some small heads. You're not really going to be screwing anything, but just being able to push on something that's kind of small and hard to get to. This will help. And then you're going to need this guy. This is a specially made Anschutz tool. You'll see where this comes in place a little bit down the line. Okay, so we've already taken the bolt out of our rifle. Again, go back and watch the other video to learn how to do that. So our first step is going to be unscrewing this black piece here. So how I like to do it is I like to hold this part of the rifle with these fingers. I like to hold this part of the rifle with this hand, and then with these fingers I twist towards me, so towards my thumb in the counterclockwise direction, and you just twist all the way, and while you're twisting, kind of pull apart like this. So twist all the way while you're pulling apart until you access the firing pin. We don't need this right now, so I like to screw it back together a little bit and then just set it aside for later. Now, this right here is the firing pin, this right here. So to access the firing pin now, we need to get this key off this little notch in the firing pin. This spring has a lot of loaded tension on this key right here. What we need to do is we need to pull this spring back in order to rotate this little key right here. So we're going to grab our tool here, our special tool. Again, pliers could work, but it's kind of hard. I've found this tool is just makes life so much easier. We're going to slide it in between a space up at the top of the spring. And this is going to be the hardest part here, is you're going to want to press it down. Did you see how the firing pin went down? Pull the firing pin back up. So their spring is pushed down, firing pin is up, and trying to keep it as straight as possible. Rotate that key. Don't let go of the spring or your key will go flying. Rotate that key until you're able to pull it out. And then very slowly let the tension off of the spring until it is free and won't go flying all over the place. Then you can just bring the spring off like that. And now your firing pin doesn't have any tension. Now that right there was probably the hardest part of this whole process, and it's not over yet because putting it back together is going to be just as hard. However, we're going to keep moving on. This little pin, we're going to find the other side on the low side, and we're going to put a little pressure in there like this. See how it pops out the top? And we should be able to kind of use our nail to pull it. Sometimes if you also just kind of, rattle the bolt around like this, it'll kind of jar it loose. And then it comes all the way out. All right, so the next piece of the puzzle is we want to take this gray sleeve off, the one that has all these ball bearings on it. Now, when you take this off, the ball bearings are going to want to go crazy. So you might want to get a little tin to throw them in just so they don't go all over the place. This is what actually makes your bolt smooth, so to speak, or fast, is these ball bearings. So if you lose some, it's not going to help. So the best way to pull this sleeve off is to first take this bolt and actually pull it out. But there's still a pin in there. You can feel it rotating over, but it does have some kind of left and right play. So pull it out to the right, pull it back as if you're going to rebolt, and really slowly you want to apply a little pressure on this gray sleeve forward. And again, be ready for ball bearings to go everywhere. So once you get past that little click, basically what that click is there's a little ball bearing right here that is, it has applies some pressure to it. It'll slide in and out. So once you get pretty much that ball bearing out of this little hole right here, you'll be free. You'll be home free. So once you get it past that, what I like to do is just cup my hands, tip it forward, and then just pull right out. Set that aside real quick. And then I just put this whole thing right into this tin, into this dish, because I know that ball bearings are going to go everywhere. And sure enough, there they go. So now this piece is free. All the ball bearings are in here, and there should be 7 of them. Next, going back to the bolt now. So we're more free with the firing pin. My bolt is extremely dirty, so I'm gonna clean this while I'm here. Now that I think about it, I don't know if I've ever taken my bolt all the way apart this much. So this is many years of biathlon right here that we're uncovering. So I'm guessing that once I clean this, it'll be nice and smooth again. Our next step is we're gonna take this little pin out that is holding the bolt still in place. So you can see this little pin right here. We're going to rotate, or we're going to hit it from the underside where it's a little bit skinnier. Just apply a little tap there. It should come right out the top. And again, if your bolt is not as dirty as mine, it should come right out, but you'll have to maybe peel it out if you need to. Place that with the rest, and check this out. Whoop! Out comes the bolt. Put that aside, and now there's one last piece remaining before we can take the firing pin out, because there's this guy right here. So you just kind of press it on one side, it'll pop out the other way a little bit, and just keep kind of applying pressure if you can until it comes out. And if you need to, you can use your little screwdriver to kind of help it. You just want to make sure that, because that ball bearing in there is spring loaded, so you just want to make sure that you don't do anything to launch one of these little ball bearings anywhere. You can you go like this, and you'll see there's like some springy play to it. Put that down, back to this guy, and there you go. I mean, this is extremely dirty firing pin. This, knock on wood, is the exact same firing pin that came with my rifle when I bought it. Oh man, probably close to 8-9 years ago. Yeah, I definitely have never taken this apart before, because look at how dirty my bolt is. So I'm going to take a quick second and clean it, and then I'm going to show you how to put everything back together. Really quick before I clean it though, I just want to say one thing. See this piece back here, this block that has a thread around it? You can rotate this black piece right here. You can turn that left and right, and if you unscrew it all the way, this black piece will go flying. So I recommend don't unscrew it any further than this. Leave the back of your bolt like this, because if you start cranking this thing back here too much, this little black block will go flying because it's spring loaded. One time it even hit me in the face because I didn't know what I was doing. So I recommend don't go any further than this. All right, now that the bolt is cleaner, I still wouldn't say it's super clean, but now that it's cleaner, we're just going to put everything back together. And it's really sort of like reverse order. We'll start with this guy down here. You want to hold this back base piece by the black part facing to the right. You want to take this piece, this ring, and make sure the threads are also facing to the right. And you're going to slide that on. And that guy just kind of is loose, so don't worry about that guy right now. Next, we're going to take the firing pin. And if you need to change out your firing pin, now's a good time to do so. So take your firing pin, and you're going to want to find this skinny little slot over here. You're going to feed the firing pin through that skinny slot all the way forward so it pokes out the front like this, all the way up until it rests flat like this, and now the firing pin is where it's supposed to be. Next, we are going to take this little guy. We have this cylinder with the little ball bearings on either side. We're going to slide this guy through the hole in the housing unit that is furthest back. So the circular hole that's the furthest back, we're going to slide that through. Keep the firing pin in place where it is. Slide that through all the way. And then I like to kind of go like this to make sure it's centered. Now the firing pin might rattle around and fall, but you can't get it out now because that little pin that we just put in there is preventing it. So try to keep it from rattling around, but it won't fall out now. So going back to holding the bolt like normal. You're now going to take the bolt handle, and we're going to slide it through this little open window right here. Now this is going to be a tricky part here, but we want to do this hole on, or this little tab on the right side here. We want to line that up with this little hole right here for another pin. So we're going to line that up, and it's okay if it's not perfect. We're then going to take this pin. It's our shortest pin, and it's basically a cylinder, but it does have a flat side, and you want to have the flat side facing forward. So towards the end of the firing pin, and you kind of have to like move the bolt handle around a little bit to get it to fit, but you want to slide it through this hole right here, and then also the hole that's in the bolt handle. And it's a little bit tricky, but as long as the flat side is facing forward, eventually it should just slide right in like that. Sometimes I like to take my screwdriver and just apply last little bit of pressure on it just to make sure it's all the way down. But now your bolt can slide in and out, and it can rotate around that pin, but it's not going anywhere. Now we're going to put this down for a moment, and we're going to go on to one of the trickier parts of putting the bolt back together. So we need to get all the ball bearings back in this guy, and all the ball bearings go in this center chamber here. Now, getting the ball bearings back in place is really tricky, and once you put them back, they tend to want to fall out. So I'll share a trick with you, and hopefully that'll help you with this process. But this is a really monotonous process of taking a ball bearing, sliding it down so that way it's down there in the chamber, and then you kind of have to, tap it, like slowly try to guide it back into one of the holes, and again, hopefully a correct hole. And once it's kind of set in there, I just kind of put my pinky in there and then pop it through. Now, once that's through, I do it again, and I try to get all the ball bearings in. And if you can pop it through with your pinky and avoid touching it, oh, there it goes, just fell out. I was going to say, if you can avoid touching it, sometimes it'll stay in. So this is kind of a tricky process. One thing that you can do that will help is if you take a little bit of tape, something not too sticky, but a little bit of tape, and put it around these holes here where the ball bearings are going. Then when you get the ball bearings in place and you put your pinky through and press into the ball bearing, it'll actually stick to the tape right here. And then, when you're done and you get this in place, you can then take the tape off and everything will be in place. So I'm going to go through, and it might take me a little while, so I'm going to go through and put all the ball bearings back into place, and then I'll show you how to feed this into the bolt that we have up here. All right, so I got all the ball bearings out, and I'm being super careful. I don't want to move this too much, but on this side, there's a giant wide open gap. All right, and so that is where the bolt handle is going to go. So super, super carefully, you're going to thread or feed the firing pin through the front of the sleeve. And I don't want to move my hand to show you, but it's going all the way through the front, and you're going to feed the bolt and the bolt handle all the way through that sleeve. And then this is the tricky part right here. When you get all the way back, so that way you're up against this ball bearing right here, you need to, with both hands or both fingers, you need to squeeze either side of that cylinder with the ball bearings while pushing the sleeve back. So that way you can get over that little hump. So I'm going to squeeze and push back, and then once you have a little bit of clearance, you'll make it over. The ball bearings in front might recess a little bit, but once you hear the click, now you are in. So ball bearings didn't go anywhere. That worked out pretty well. First time's the charm. And now we can move on to putting this pin in, which will get the bolt set in place. So this pin has a little knob at one of the ends. That knob should be on the high side, and it should fit into this little slot right here, like so, but it won't fit in there until you get the bolt in place. So you kind of have to move this bolt back and forth until it finds the hole that it's looking for. And sometimes it can be tricky, so don't be afraid to be a little bit aggressive with it. Boom, just found it. Push it down until it's flush. All right, and now we are in business. So now we're moving on to, if you thought that was the hardest part, putting those ball bearings back in, this is actually going to be one of the harder parts. The ball bearings is a monotonous part. This part is the harder part because there's a lot of different tension that you need to apply at one time. Okay, so just like before, we need to apply this spring, and we need to get this key to keep the spring in place. So basically what we're doing is we need to compress the spring down so that way it's loaded. We're going to put this key on top of the spring, and then we're going to rotate it so that way these notches, and I'm not doing a good job of focusing on this thing, but so that way these notches connect to these notches that are right here on the firing pin. So basically what it should look like is you want to push the spring down, and then you're going to rotate this guy around the firing pin in this little notch right here, and then once the spring is released and the tension goes, this thing will shoot up, but it'll be caught on those notches, and then boom, you have your firing pin. But we need to do that with the spring on, and it's a lot harder than it seems. So we need to grab our spring tool again. We're gonna drop the spring over the top like so. Next, we're going to take the firing pin and we're going to pull it forward. So you want to pull it, apply some pressure forward, and then we're going to try to find I like to try to find the highest notch on the spring as we can. And while pulling with your left hand, pull the firing pin away from the bolt. You're going to press down with your right hand until you load that spring up. So try to get that spring super low, pull away from the bolt with the left hand, and again, this spring is super tight, but do your best. Apply the key here, and then rotate it once you can do it. Let go slowly, so that way, in case you're not on, the spring or the pin doesn't go firing. And then once it's on, bam, pull it out, and look at that. That completely, honestly, that was the easiest time I've ever had doing that process. So yeah, I've had some practice doing it, but I really think the trick is when you push down on this spring with your other hand, pull the firing pin away so that way there's, like opposite, tension. So your spring is down, firing pin is high, and then it creates that tiny little bit of gap there that you can get the spring in and rotate it. All right, obviously we're almost done. Let's go back to these two pieces now with the ridges facing forward. I like to thread this guy a little bit. I'm going to go clockwise just a little bit, just about 1 thread's worth. Pick up the bolt, and now you want to feed these two guys together. And so see how on the left side there's a pin right here, and then on the right side there is a little notch. You want to feed that pin into the notch, and now doing the exact opposite as what we did earlier, you're going to go clockwise, applying pressure both ways. So with my hands, I'm pushing the bolt together like that, and you're going to rotate clockwise on this little guy. Once this little collar here reaches the back side of the bolt, the left side of the bolt, it's going to start making a few noises. That's okay. It's just a little bit of clicky click. And you might have to kind of, unscrew and screw back in a little bit, just a few times until you get it good and tight. And voila, you did it right if when you look forward, you can see your firing pin out the little hole here. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is how you take your bolt apart and put it back together. It's very monotonous. I don't recommend doing it, but sometimes you need to know how to do it the morning of a race in the cold. And I've had to do that before, both as an athlete and as a coach. So